This Manchester City season preview edition of the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our Patreon. Score exclusive perks, content and contests, including our NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 prize. Join today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Welcome everybody to the Premier League Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. My name is Malcolm Bamford, coming to you from Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. Our season previews kick on as we speak. You don't know when we're speaking, but I do. We are 1 week and half of 1 hour away from the start of the Premier League season. It's 7:30 on the Friday night. So this time next week, it'll be nearly time for Burnley versus Manchester City, the team that we cover tonight. Joining us, Baz Penaluna from Nottinghamshire. Are you excited, Baz?
I'm very excited. Not so much for half hour you, but very excited for the Premier League coming up. And also, tonight got the start of the EFL action. Championship kicks off tonight. So as you say, we are recording this on Friday night. So we've got Sheffield v Southampton kicking off in about half an hour.
So if you had a bet on that then, Baz, so people who are listening to this from beyond the grave, you can listen. They can find out if you won or not.
Over 1.5 Southampton goals is the pick.
Nice. And
to be fair, that came from the Discord channel. Lenny put that one out as a fancy, and I like the sound of it. Southampton have got Ward-Prowse in the starting lineup. Got a few players from last season. Bednarek's in there. Walker-Peters, strong enough for me to have a go on Southampton tonight. So, yes, that's the pick. But good time to shout out that we've got the EFL Futures and First Weekend Pick Show out now, although by the time anyone listens to this, Malcolm, who knows whether that's relevant. Well, the futures stuff...
You can still get on, though. The markets won't be gone. Not the outrights, anyway.
It's been popular, that show. We've had a lot of downloads on the EFL show today, so good to see people are obviously keen on the EFL stuff. We'll put more of that out as the season goes on. But, yeah, let's crack on with the Premier League season review.
Yes. As Baz says, we cover everything here. Any Manchester City fans who are stumbling across us just for a bit of content on their team for the first time, we have shows twice a week. We give out picks on the weekends. Normally a Thursday night show covering the weekends. We'll have a preview show, review show after the weekend. We'll cover the Champions League, all the cup competitions, international breaks. Normally an hour or so of mild silliness and some picks from me and Baz. Sometimes we do okay, other times we don't, but that's how it is. All the usual places you'll find us. It's the Premier League Gambling Podcast on Spotify, Apple and Google, on Twitter at SGP and Premier, and on YouTube as well. We go live. If you want to join us live, you'll see the shows scheduled on YouTube. We've got a fantasy league as well we're going to tell you about halfway through the show. We're going to cover some. Tonight, we're going to look at Manchester City, make some betting picks on Man City for the season, and cover some FPL later on in the show as well. I'll tell you, first thing I'll tell you about our Patreon, the Sports Gambling Podcast Patreon for the die-hard DGens. Sign up to get exclusive contests, including the NFL win totals contest with a $1,000 first place prize, plus the monthly SGP Stories podcast, which is an ad-free, uncensored show highlighting the best stories from decades of being DGens. We continue to wage the war against corporate gambling. Help us do that at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Patreon. Manchester City then, Baz. Weirdly, bear in mind we hate everybody. Man City still don't really get on my tits the way that I think maybe since they got good is because I got older. Well, there's two reasons. Obviously, anyone who was good when I was young annoyed me. And then because I hated Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal, any of them, Man City have stopped them doing stuff, I think. So I'm quite into what Manchester City have done. In terms of stopping my most hated teams. How are you feeling?
I've wrote down similar things. I mean, Man City don't conjure up any real emotions for me, either in favour or against. And I think the reason is because their era of dominance has coincided with Newcastle being shit. So they've never got in our way of anything.
Definitely not.
Whereas, as you say, when we were better, then it was Arsenal, it was Man United, it was those teams who were getting in the way of things. So maybe over the years, if Newcastle can continue to be pushing at the right end of the table, Man City might start to get on our tits. But at the moment, I think that's the reason for me, is because we've never been in competition with Man City at any point in the last 10, 12 years. So
I always, as well, before they got good, sort of viewed them similar to Newcastle, which were a big old team, not fulfilling the potential, great fan base, and just always a bit of a lovable rogue, a bit of a shambles, because everyone knew they were big, but they were never annoying anyone because we never won anything. Man City never won anything. Obviously, that's all changed now. So I did view them very similar to Newcastle. Hopefully, we can view Newcastle similar to Manchester City again in the next couple of years when we start winning stuff.
Malcolm. I'm going to view them at Wembley. I'm going down to Wembley on Sunday for Man City v Arsenal in the Community Shield.
Why?
So I'll be taking in that. Why not? It's all it's on company expenses, Malcolm.
Well, that's fair enough. You get some beer. I mean, if that was on in the back garden, Baz, I'd probably shut the curtains. Like,
I know. My cousin Andrew, who occasionally listens to the show, messaged me this morning. Said, I've got 2 free tickets in Club Wembley for Man City Arsenal. Do you want them? And as you know, a friend of ours, Kieran, is a Man City fan.
Yeah.
He's sorted me out over the years with lots of VIP tickets for the boxing for various reasons. So I owed him one. So I thought, we'll offer him a trip down to see Man City Arsenal. And why not? Kieran's going to drive. I'll get a drink and we'll got free tickets. So the day out, watch a bit of footy in it.
I'll tell you what, Baz, you're everything that's wrong with modern football. You. Everything. Yeah, just corporate greed, innit? You epitomise the corporate greed. You're the Manchester City of the podcast hosts on this show. I'm like the everyday working man. I'm the Luton Town, and you're the Man City, and now you've ruined it. You've ruined this podcast for me now.
You know why the ticket was available? Because my cousin didn't have a ticket for the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup final.
Yeah.
So had to purchase a 3-year Club Wembley membership to get him into the Carabao Cup final. That means he gets the FA Cup final, the Community Shield, every England game, and the FA Cup semi-finals every year for 3 years, but has to pay a very handsome fee for that privilege. He's not using these ones and offered them my way, and I was happy to take them and go and watch a game of football. It's been a while.
I've got a mate who keeps getting free Fulham shit through the post because he joined Fulham as a member, like to get to when Newcastle were in the Championship to go down to a Fulham game. Might have been that Friday night, first game in the Championship when we got beat 1-0. And they did have that neutral stand behind the goal, but you had to be a Fulham member. So sort of at Christmas and pre-season, you'll get like a little Fulham wallet or a calendar or a key ring. He's got all this weird Fulham memorabilia that is no use to anybody, a bottle opener and shit like that. If you go around his house, you're opening your beer with a Fulham bottle opener. Man City then, Baz. I actually came into this thinking it was going to be really hard because what we've done with every team preview is there's been lots of different markets to bet on. You can think a team is going to be good. You can think they might not be as good. Top 4, top 6, top half, bottom half, relegation. With Man City, I knew there wasn't going to be those options because they're probably going to win it. And even if they don't win it, there's not very many options. You know, the finish in the bottom half, finish below Brighton, things like that just weren't really in play. So there was fewer things in play. As it happens, I actually quite enjoyed looking at them across the season, and I managed to pick 3 or 4 quite fancy price bets by the end. So not too bad. Run the numbers, Baz. They won the league last year, 89 points. I think every preview we've done this so far, Baz, I've said that City won the league with 91 points. Have you noticed that? Yeah. I have, every single one. That's like 11, I think. So forget that.
My mind when I looked at the numbers today.
Did you? Yeah, it's the first time I noticed.
I thought, I'm sure he said they had 91 or 92.
Yeah, no one will notice that, Baz. That's bollocks. So yeah, to win the Premier League, they are 4-6. What's that? -150. I'll give you a few of the markets, but like I say, there's not many you can play on. Top 4 is 1-16. To miss the top 4, they are 7-1. To miss the top 6, they are 10-1. Bottom half finish, they are 14-1. And obviously on the handicap, they start off scratch. They're the ones, they are the team with the target on their back in the handicap market. There's loads of other, I doubt many of our picks have come from those markets, but mine have come from things like the straight forecast market. There's a couple of parlays, things like that you can get involved in. So immediately, Baz, on the outright market, I think if I was a rich man, if you gave me £10,000 and asked me to bet it on something, I would back Man City at 4-6. However, if I'm betting £25 or £30 or £50, I'm not investing that at 4-6 over a 9-month season, you know. So I think it is good value. I think I thought they'd be shorter when I priced it up. But I mean, looking back at last year, the only thing that ever put it in doubt was that Arsenal were as good as they were for so long. And I think we did one show in January, Baz, where I actually thought it had flipped. Arsenal had flipped and gone favourites. And I kind of concurred with that. I said at the time, I think Arsenal might do it from here. Might sort of January, February time, because Man City really didn't do an awful lot wrong. They did have 3 defeats and 3 draws up till January the 14th. But then finished like an absolute steam train. 15 wins from 16 games. The only game they didn't win was the 1-1 draw at Forest. So, I mean, just on the outright Spurs, before we get into some of the more peripheral markets, are you expecting anything different than Man City going in at 4-6?
I don't know. I mean, you could make an argument that they've got a slightly weaker squad than last season because they've lost Gundogan and they've lost Mahrez. Gundogan in particular will definitely be a loss. He was a regular in the team, hugely influential during that good run in the second half of the season. And whilst Mahrez wasn't always starting, he was a player that comes in whenever he was needed and doesn't weaken the squad. So we'd always talked about Man City having this strength and depth of 2 players in every position. And Gundogan and Mahrez going affects them. They have brought in, it sounds like Gvardiol is going to come in. From what we saw in the World Cup, he should be a good addition. The concern there is where does he fit? They've got tons of defenders all of a sudden, haven't they? Stones, Diaz, Ake, Laporte, Akanji, and now Gvardiol. So lots of options in there. I think at this stage, I'm expecting more of the same. But there's still talk of Bernardo Silva possibly going. There's still talk of Kyle Walker could be going. And I think if you lose them 2 on top of Gundogan and Mahrez, that's a big change, and it's a lot of your experience gone. And I don't know, that's the only glimmer of hope, I think, for teams chasing Man City, is that if those 2 go on top of what have already gone, then that could affect them.
I think, Baz, just to add into that, if there was one team who looked ready to take the big step forward, if there was one team who had a good season last year, and then added a couple of players and you think they're going to go again, then you could see someone challenging Man City. But I don't see that because the Arsenal really were the only team who got anywhere near them. And I don't think they are going to take the big step forward. I fancy a little bit of regression out of Arsenal. And then all the other teams, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, were nowhere near. They weren't close enough. So they could take a step closer, but they're still going to be 2 steps behind. The fly in the ointment would be Newcastle, but again, we're still 3 steps behind. We might close the gap to 2, but we're not going to close it and overtake. And so it's the fact that you don't worry if the teams. I think you need to, the word people use is churn. You need to churn your squad. I think Liverpool have been have ran into this as a problem a couple of times. Nothing ever changes by staying the same, and if you don't churn your players, it can get a little bit stale. Now, with Man City haven't brought many in, although they're still only it's only the second year of Haaland. You know what I mean? So there's still, Grealish is still on the upswing of his cycle. So I don't think it's not been 4 or 5 years of this set of players yet. So I'm not duly worried about that. Maybe next year, if they don't churn and Newcastle, Arsenal take a step closer again, then they might be capable of overturning them, but just not quite yet, Baz. So that's why I think the 4 to 6 is solid.
Yeah, I mean, you see, Arsenal got close. I mean, Arsenal still finished 5 points behind them, and Man City they dropped 5 points in the last 2 games at the point where they'd won the league, got pissed and focused on the Champions League. Could easily have been, if Man City had needed points in those last 2 games, they'd have got them. So they actually won it at a canter at the end. They've just got that knack, haven't they, of hitting the right run at the right time when everyone thinks they might be about to slip up. It's happened a couple of times before. Well, they'll go on one of these crazy ones. As you say, there are definitely players who will improve. Grealish is on the upwards trajectory, as you say. And Foden, I think it could be a big season for Foden. He was sort of in and out of it last year. But if Gundogan going suddenly means Foden's going to be playing more, then that's not a massive downgrade. Like Foden will have a big season, I think, this season.
Since a betting Man City on a weekly basis, there was a few angles that I think do give you options to bet them. They conceded goals last year, Baz. They only kept clean sheets in 37% of their home games. So that was a good angle of, I mean, both teams to score would have been an angle there. And obviously that lent itself to overs and 34% overall. So they weren't rock solid at the back. They scored at home in the first half, 84% of the time. And both teams to score 58% of the time as well. So again, if you're getting plus money on both teams to score Manchester City games, you're flying. And then, ladders, over 3.5 goals at home, 42% of the time, Baz. I mean, that'll be a nice price. Over 3.5 goals at home for Manchester City. I would reckon that'd probably be above 2-1 in a lot of the games, unless they were playing sort of the bottom 3. And then match goals would be the other one, Baz. 5 or more match goals hit 32% of the time. So in a third of the games, there's 5 or more match goals. Obviously, that's a lot of big wins. But equally, there was teams chipping in there. You saw the 3-3 at Newcastle as an example. So they're all trends that you could convert into bets. Finally, at home, Manchester City covered the spread. So they covered a 1.5 deficit 14 out of 18 times. So if you wanted to back Man City on the handicap, 14 times at home, you would have hit them as well. So there's definitely some trends for Manchester City you can follow. And I think we did okay with them. There was a both teams to score little run after Christmas that we cashed a lot of times. Like,
yeah, you took the both teams to score quite a lot. I think I've done okay with sort of the goals and the handicaps, whereas you went the opposite way on things. I forgot to mention they've also brought in Kovacic. Was another addition, wasn't he, this season, which was a bit of a surprise for me. But we'll see how he settles in as well.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, outright, I have found some other bets here. The 4 to 6 is big. It's not a working man's price. It's certainly a parlay piece. If you wanted to put your ACCA on, we talked about ACCAs last night on the AFL show. And one of the most fun things you can do as a football fan is to get your 4-team ACCA on the 4 divisions. And it's quite often nice to have a keystone in there. If you're going down the divisions and you've got some, last night we gave out sort of Borough at 10-1. And I can't remember who else we gave out. There were fairly big prices, so there was no shorties in there. If you want a 4 to 6 in there as a keystone, Stockport at 6-1 and Bolton at 8-1 were my other 3. So if you're looking, even if you're going to try and land a double, an 8-1 winner with Bolton, double it up with your Manchester City at 4 to 6 would be a way to go. But I did find some prices, Baz. So the top scorer market is obviously of interest because Haaland, who was outstanding last year, will be outstanding again. Is an absolute phenomenon. Great to watch. And because he's a little bit different as well. Like when I went to St James's Park for that 3-3 draw, I was excited at the prospect of seeing Haaland. And that doesn't very often happen. You don't often say, I'm looking forward to this today because I'm going to see this kid I've never seen before. Now, Haaland is 8-11, which is minus 136. He only doesn't win this if he gets injured. That's the only thing stopping him. No one's getting near him. Harry Kane's second in. I don't think he's going to be there, but if he is, he's not going to get anywhere near him. And then who goes on a mad run? Salah, Nunez, one of these Chelsea people, Callum Wilson. Just not happening. Like Haaland wins if he's fit. Again, not a working man's price, 8 to 11. But you can double them up, Baz. Talking about parlay pieces, Manchester City to win the league and Haaland to be top scorer. I can only, if City win the league, Haaland top scores, again, through injury. So if you're taking either one of them, you put them both together, and that's 11 to 10. That's plus money, Baz, plus 110. Did that one catch your eye at all?
It did. It's exactly what I've got wrote down in my picks.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Baz.
I mean, I've got to say about everything that's wrong with the modern day football fan. Ooh, I can't wait to go see Haaland at St James's. That's a bit.
No, that just shows growth and development. You're sitting there on Bucksheet tickets. There's probably some little kid somewhere in Rochdale crying his eyes out, getting a lump of coal for his birthday. Never been to see his heroes in his life. So you can sit there swilling beer and eating bleeding Parmesan cheese or something.
I'll live with that. That's fine. But yeah,
well, I just want to see Haaland play.
4 to 6 to win the league is fair, but it's short, and I said exactly the same. I think personally, I'd rather just tag on Haaland top scorer and take the 11 to 10. I mean, they're rightfully the favourites for every tournament they enter, I think, next year. But what I find interesting is they're 4 to 6 to win the Premier League. They're 2 to 1 to win the Champions League, 3 to 1 to win the FA Cup, and 7 to 2 to win the Carabao Cup. And them numbers start to get more interesting for me. 4 to 6 to win the league, or 7 to 2 to win the Carabao Cup. So I think you can double those up as well. So I think you could also, if you didn't want to go with Haaland, take out the risk of like the injury to Haaland or anything like that. Take them to win the league and then double it up with one of the other cups. Which one do you think they're going to win? And you can get 5 to 1 for them to do a Premier League FA Cup double, or 5 to 1 for them to do a Premier League and League Cup double. And I think they're tempting for me. If you think they're going to win the league, tag something else on, but have a think about what you fancy, because they can win every tournament. I mean, the one.
Is that not a nice? Is that a nice lucky 15 sort of acute all four? Do you know what I mean? Doubles and upwards, round robin sort of thing. Yankee.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, they won the FA Cup. They went out the League Cup to Southampton. There's nothing to say if they hadn't won that Southampton game, they wouldn't have went on and won all four. You wouldn't have put it past them. I think 7 to 2 for them to win the Carabao Cup is quite appealing, and 3 to 1 for the FA Cup. So yeah, that caught my eye. I thought Premier League and League Cup at odds of 5 to 1 would be a pick for me. I had a look for them to repeat last year's feat, the treble of Champions League, FA Cup, and the league. That's 18 to 1, and they're 66 to 1 this year to win everything. So that's the domestic treble plus the Champions League. But for me, I agree with you. Haaland and Man City winning the league is 11 to 10. But I'm also going to go for a double of the Premier League and the Carabao Cup at odds of 5 to 1. So Man City to win both of them at 5 to 1.
I've got another two here, Baz. The first one is the winner bottom double, first place, 20th place double, Manchester City in Sheffield United. That's a price of 92 plus 450. I've got Sheffield United finishing bottom. I think you've got Sheffield United finishing bottom. So that's a nice price at 92. And the straight forecast, Baz, Manchester City to win the league with Newcastle in second place. No surprises. That's 12 to 1, Baz. Get involved in that. I can see nothing, possible downside when Newcastle is the Champions League. But other than that, the trajectory of everything in every one at that club is positive. No one and nothing is going to regress there. It can only be the Champions League that buggers them a little bit.
I picked out the exact same thing, not the forecast, but the top and bottom double. I think when we put out our very first pre-season preview show, where we put out some initial thoughts, I think I pulled out the same thing. Man City to win, Sheffield United to finish bottom was an option. So yeah, I don't mind that at all. I think both of us have got Sheffield United finishing below Luton. And yeah, again, it's just another way of tagging something onto Man City to try and get a fancy price that you don't mind sort of tying some money up in it for the season. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll talk some fantasy stuff in a minute after I've told you about underdog fantasy with the NFL season. approaching very quickly. Underdog Pick'em is a great way to get down on a ton of NFL player props and is available in a ton of markets. There's loads of opportunities to win in their daily MLB contests, and make sure to enter Best Ball Mania 4, where first place gets $3 million. Head over to underdogfantasy.com. Use the promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's underdogfantasy.com, promo code SGPN. Okay, fantasy. We do have a listener league here. Any of you City fans who've lasted this long going into the league, it's free to enter, and we have some prizes you might pick up. £150 in cash. We've got some merch, hats, hoodies, loads of good stuff in the merch store. Fulham bottle openers. The Egg in the Cup Cup, you can't put a price on. The code for that league is CVVQAB. That is Colin, Vincent, Quinn, Adebayor, Bell. CVVQAB. Now, I think you might point out, Baz, that I might have used Colin. I might have used Quinn before. However, I went with the whole Manchester City here. So, this is nice. Colin and Bell is for Colin Bell. I mean, any Man City fans who've lasted 27 minutes have got to appreciate the Colin Bell reference. Yes, no?
Yeah, you can have that, yeah.
I think Colin Bell was at the cup final. He was formed the guard of honour as the teams walked out. Alex Ferguson on one side and Colin Bell on the other side, and all the Man United fans. The City players don't even know who Colin Bell is. Dickheads. And Niall Quinn, just to appease our Sunderland followers. And Emmanuel Adebayor, because he ran all that way after he scored that header, didn't he? That was fun. Right, Basil, the expert Man City players, is there any value? Because they're all going to be highly priced.
Well, Haaland's a must-have, isn't he? He's 14 million. I think you can take a gamble if you want, but it just feels like a certain way to lose ground on everyone else. So I think with Haaland, you just have to take your medicine, spend your 14 million and move on with £86 million to spend on the remaining 14 players. That would be my approach. He's been in there from my first time I looked at the website, and he won't move. He'll be in there and he'll be captain most weeks, let's be honest. Kevin De Bruyne has always been a popular pick for Fantasy Premier League. And I think less so this year. He's 10.5 million. And with Rashford at 9.5, Bruno 9, Saka, they're all at cheaper prices. And even Foden, £3 million cheaper, you get Foden. He only scored 41 points less than Kevin De Bruyne last season in Premier League, Fantasy Premier League. And he seemed to play a lot less time. I haven't looked at the minutes played, but Foden started a lot less last year than previously. So I think Kevin De Bruyne's one to avoid, just too expensive. There's better value around at that price point. So for me, I'll be starting with Haaland and Foden. I am expecting Foden to start, and I think he could have a good season. 7.5 million looks really good. And I'd like a defensive option. So where do you go? For me, I don't like spending big money on the keepers. So Edison probably won't make it in. And I think if I'm going to go for a defender, it's probably going to be Stones, with the potential for him to be continuing in that midfield role. So at 5.5 million, you've got him a little bit further up the pitch. You've got him up there for set pieces, and you've got clean sheet potential. So Stones would have to be the one. If you want to try and get a defender in, it's got to be Stones. Going back 2 seasons ago, the must-have was Cancelo, because he was playing as an out sort of left back, bombing up, getting the assists, getting the goals. Obviously, he's no longer an option, and they're just not playing that way. Benjamin Mendy was the same when he was there. He was a really solid FPL asset for his attacking threat. But City playing a bit differently now, so they haven't got the sort of wing backs where you would be thinking, let's go attack them. So I think Stones is the one for me.
Yeah, Baz, I've got nothing except the same 3 players. I've got Haaland with must-have written next to his name. There's really there's no other options. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I love De Bruyne as a footballer. Absolutely adore him. I've seen him do some incredible things up here. But he just seems a little bit more injury prone. He's in and out. He had a poor World Cup. He's incredibly expensive. He just seems to be on the slide ever so slightly. Won't stop him being magnificent, but it might stop him getting into my fantasy team. It has to be Foden. You might get Grealish. Might get more. The problem with Grealish was always, really, the problem with Grealish and Foden was always opportunity. I think they'll both get that this year. And then everyone else is going to be sort of victim of the rotation. Alvarez is an excellent player, but opportunity again. I mean, the minute Haaland tweaks a hamstring, Alvarez is going to be in everybody's team for the 6 weeks or whatever. Absolutely. Do you know what I mean?
Bernardo Silva could be an option. Again, you just want to see how much game time he's getting, and if he stays, is the other thing. But yeah, as you mentioned, Alvarez would be great if he's playing every week for Man City. Then he's a real live option, but that seems unlikely at the moment.
Yeah, okay then, Baz, there you go. Do you have any other final thoughts to throw out here on Manchester City?
I think that's it from me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done all right to give we've got some shorties out. We've got some 11 to 10 stuff. Then we've got a couple of 5 to 1 shots. I've got some double figure prices as well. Baz has given an angle into parlays to win the trophies. And, like you say, fairly standard FPL stuff. But we might not win you the league, but you certainly can lose it if you don't have Haaland in there from the start. If you have listened, any City fans or from wherever else you are, give us a thumbs up and a subscribe and a 5-star review, anything like that. Like I say, come back and join us because we'll be back next week on a couple of occasions with some outrights. But then the main event is going to be the pick show for next weekend's fixtures, starting with Burnley against Manchester City on Friday night. We'll give out picks for all the games. And like I say, it's always done with a little bit of fun and games. And we might just find you a winner as well. Baz, thank you very much. Thank you very much, anyone who listened. Do get in touch with us. And until next time, we'll see you down the road. Cheers.